everybody. Welcome back to yet another episode of SafeTay Talks, the podcast where we are building a safer fleet industry through technology, compliance, and great real-world conversations. I'm your host, SafeTay. Today, we are joined by Lawrence Bader. Lawrence, thank you so much for popping on today. You have an extremely impressive background. Lawrence has led, global technology, operational strategy initiatives at UPS, really, a very large scale driving transformation. So perfect person for today's conversation. We'll be discussing, not only the future of trucking, but how fleet performance will increasingly be defined by how effectively organizations use the data they already have, right? So as fleets become more connected, the advantage will go to those who are really moving beyond just collecting that information and actually turning into, disciplined automated execution, which is, your bread and butter. So, we'll definitely explore how we can move behind dashboards, use data to really strengthen reliability, accountability, and performance at scale. So again, thank you, so much for joining. And for, those listeners out there that, may not know you, if you can, briefly would love to hear your background, your perspective on fleet technology. I mean, you have over 30 years of experience leading technology at UPS. So would love to turn it over to you and, hear your whole history.
Well, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. So again, thank you for having me on. So yeah, as you mentioned, I recently retired from UPS after 32 years leading what we call the Global Fleet Systems Organization. And in essence, I was in IT. I got to play with technology on commercial vehicles. At the end of the day, I was responsible for all the technology that was either placed on a vehicle or around a vehicle that was required to maintain or operate that vehicle. And that was roughly about 275,000 pieces of rolling equipment for a little over 130,000 drivers. Of course, that's over a very global network there. So, 32 years is a long time, and I lived through the transition from paper and radio dispatch to basic telematics to today's connected vehicle platforms, and we've certainly all moved into the age of all electronic communications. And I come from a company that's got a lot of UPS culture. It's a deep engineering discipline, a lot of operational rigor, and as you kind of mentioned there, of course, scale. With that size of an organization, when we put technology to use, we can put it to its paces pretty well. So, my goal now that I've retired is really to help fleets adopt technology, and you'll hear me say this quite a bit: is put data to operational use.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say, as I said, when I say impressive background at scale, I was not mentioned lightly. But, you have this experience that, I mean, arguably one of the most transformative times. I mean, those 30 years you've been there is when, every industry has had their technology boom. From your perspective, what are like the most major shifts that you have seen, either then or even more currently that are really like reshaping how these operations are moving in trucking right now?
Well, I think it first starts off with the explosion of connected asset data, whether it's from the tractors, the trailers, or really any component out there. And, the Internet of Things has certainly exploded in our time and age. And now we've got the rapid improvement with AI analytics, which leads
Mm.
to predictive modeling. And, I think in our commercial trucking industry, we lean a lot more into what I call physics-based AI because we are dealing with physical assets. Um, and the unfortunate thing in our business, we're dealing with increased pressure of margins, and those margins really it's the culmination of uptime, driver productivity, safety compliance, but most importantly, in my mind, it's brand reputation.
Mhm.
So we're really got a major shift from the human, mundane type of decision making to now moving into system assisted decision making, but most importantly, execution of that. So
Mhm.
that to me is the major shifts we're seeing.
Yeah, and that's what I always see is it's almost a catch-22 sometimes, right? Because you have all of this great technology coming up so quickly that can really help, businesses of any size scale very quickly, but you still need to take the time to do the proper execution to then get to that scale, right? So it's almost like you need to spend time to get the time back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I know, obviously many fleets now are investing, in AI. They're investing in, telematics, safety. I mean, there's so much data now, it's almost overwhelming. Where do you see that fleets are, really struggling to actually turn that visibility into a meaningful operational gain?
Well, I think a lot of the fleets that I get to interact with a lot these days is they kind of stop short really at the visibility layer instead of really carrying it through to the execution or taking meaningful action with that data. So today, a lot of data sits in dashboards or it sits in reports, or we even got to sending emails out about your assets having issues, but these emails just fall on the floor because we get inundated with emails. Instead, we need to move towards feeding all of that information into the operational workflows that are there, meeting operations where they are today, getting it into the hands of those who can put it to use every hour, every day, every minute. Not when I want to, feel interested in going to a dashboard or looking at a pretty map or looking at a report. Those days, that's not going to be very effective. So I think the challenge with that, and I lived through this myself, it was the lack of system integration between the platforms. So we have new vendor systems out here with great, great sensor-based insights. We got the new AI agents coming along, but they need to be fed back into our operational systems, which are obviously, oftentimes they're legacy back office systems. And that's where we run today. So getting the new data into our legacy operational systems is key. But I think the real challenge with making that happen is an organizational challenge. I see a lot of operational teams that are simply not aligned with the technology teams. And as you heard me say when I started, I came from IT, but I'm also the IT guy who had a passion for vehicles. I actually enjoy building and racing cars. So I know how to turn a wrench. So I was able to build a relationship with the fleet maintenance organization, the automotive engineering organization, and gain respect. And vice versa. They also looked at the IT organization as really as an asset to help them achieve their objectives. So a lot of fleets that I bump in today, there are two different worlds, and we got to bring those two worlds together because at the end of the day, we got to get that operational data we got to get that data into operational execution.
Yeah, and I feel like, because I've had a lot of these conversations as well where, it's two I mean, they need to be in lockstep, those two departments. And I think sometimes everyone actually needs you, with that background that has an understanding of both those worlds. Cause I can imagine there's plenty of, other IT departments and folks that are, hey, let's get, the flow of technology, let's get this data in. But if you don't understand the front lines of those folks that are working on the maintenance and actually
Yeah.
getting the trucks out, you might think, hey, they need X, Y, and Z. And that's not actually 100% what they need.
Yeah.
And so now if you're on the front line, you're gonna be more reluctant to even work with those teams because well, they don't understand what I need anyway, so I'm
Right.
just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. If it's not broke, don't fix it, because they're not seeing on the back end where, "Hey, we have this great data for you," So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that relationship is more important than I think m most people
Yeah,
realize.
I often say and coach a lot of IT folks, you need to be business intimate. You need to
Mhm.
be able to walk and talk in the shoes of the folks who are leveraging the systems that you built. So that's extremely important. And I've seen organizations do that, and I think I'm an example of that.
Yeah, well, definitely a great example. You have a lot of speaking of examples, I know you and I have, kind of gotten to talk a lot of, the different topics that you've interested in, that you've been a part of. One of them that you mentioned that I found very interesting was the, keyless tractor at UPS. I know that was a massive rollout for you. So I would love for you to walk us through, what that looked like and, what the key outcomes were after rolling that out.
Sure, sure. So, I mean, this is a great example of we were able to, move into the electronic age, and the goal of what we call keyless tractor was to eliminate the physical keys in the manual, asset control, actually physically handing out keys to our drivers, and we would do this 22,500 times a day, and that adds up in a hurry. So our mission was to avoid having the driver have to walk into the dispatch office and pick up their key because the day went kind of like this. They would show up to the facility, go through the guard shack, but they already have on their device, they already know what their route is. They know where they're going. They know what the tractor ID, it's already pre-assigned, but yet they still have to walk into the dispatch office. Sometimes it's pouring down rain or might be cold. And when they go in there and they get the key to a certain tractor, they say, you know what? I don't really like this tractor. I want my favorite tractor. So they might
Oh,
sweet talk the person behind the counter and you know, try to change out that tractor, and that just kind of gets everything upended. We want to have accountability for which driver is actually going to drive the tractor that they're assigned to. So at the end of the day, you know, we deployed an application we call Keyless Tractor. It assigns you your encrypted digital key for you only, for that day only, for that shift only, if you're assigned to it. And they can walk straight from the guard shack straight to the tractor. And as they're approaching the tractor, it can actually unlock as you're walking up to it, start its pre-trip sweep. And when you hop in, the engine is now ready for enablement, and they can just go in and push button start, and they're off and running. This was actually also very helpful for our technicians in the shop. You know, imagine if you were a technician, you want to go move the tractor into the shop to work on it, and you went to the dispatch office to pick up the key, and you walked out there and realized, well, they're back, you know, they're parked back to back, and I had two tractors, you know, sitting one behind the other. Well, crap! Now I got to go walk back to the dispatch office to get a key for that one. So we enabled a program where I could just do a scan and go. I could scan the trailer ID, and as long as I was allowed to move that tractor and I had the authorization to do that, it would immediately issue me an electronic digital key. And I could start that tractor, move it out of the way, and then proceed to get the tractor that I want to bring into the shop. So multiple use cases. At the end of the day, the drivers loved it, and we were able to shave unnecessary wasted time off the people handling the keys in the dispatch office, driver walk time, maintenance staff. It was a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's so many, little things that, some operations may not even think about, those little minutes. I mean, they add up so quickly. And I think that's a great
Especially at
example
scale.
of data points that people probably aren't even analyzing.
Yep. So, you know, we were able to the things that I didn't mention is eliminating lost keys. You know, I can't even count how many times we had keys that were taken home, that were
Mhm.
lost, that were actually sometimes thrown on the roof. Yes, because there might be times where
Yeah.
I kept getting issued the tractor that I absolutely hate. I don't want that tractor. So you know what? I'm going to eliminate that problem for tomorrow. Whoosh, keys go on the roof. So tomorrow I get the tractor that I want. You know, so that helps
Mhm.
of having to cut keys, but again, it gets back to really running the organization efficiently and to the degree that we really wanted to do.
Yeah, love that. I actually wish I had that for my car. The amount of times I'm running around my house last minute looking for my car key.
Well, a lot of the new cars today, you know, will come with that feature. But the challenge is you don't want to have a separate app for your Volvo, a different app for your Ford, a different app for your Chevy. You know, with this one, we have 4 or 5 makes and models of the tractors, and we simply have one application administered on one platform, and it's the same look and feel for everybody.
Yes. And that's a big thing, I think, with connectivity as well. I mean, you're talking earlier about having all these different systems and wanting to talk to each other. But I think the more that you can get on one platform,
Yeah.
we are just so overwhelmed with technologies and applications, and they're all extremely helpful. But when you have that end user, especially when it's a driver or somebody that has a very time based type of position, logging into multiple different systems,
Yeah.
remembering different logins, that doesn't really help anything either,
Yeah.
from an automation standpoint.
Remember what I said, meet the operation where they are.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. Well, as fleets continue to modernize, obviously there's going to be other examples, broader ideas, what folks should do, what folks shouldn't do. Where do you see, other smart assets like connected tractors and smart trailers? Where do you see all of these things also fitting into this, new version of operational intelligence?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, you know, AI, we're really on the you know, the beginning stages of AI and putting physics-based AI to operational use, and the reality, as you mentioned, trailers and tractors and all, they're generating tremendous amounts of data, and putting that data to operational use is the key. So let's take an example of the sensors you might actually find in a trailer, such as cargo status with the cameras that are in there, tire health. What is my tire pressures? What is my automatic tire inflation system? Is it running? How long is it running? What's my brake condition? How thick is my brake pads and rotor? What are the door events? How many times did the stability control actually, take effect in the trailer? So, you know, we're able to take this data and create like an automated service repair ticket as an example. You know, if I have a trailer going down the highway today, the tire you may run over a nail, and the tire pressure goes from 100 psi, which is standard, down to 90 psi, 80 psi. The driver hasn't really sensed that yet, but the sensors
Mhm.
can tell them that. But more importantly, if I can add that data to my automatic tire inflation system and I know that it's firing and it's actually trying to fill that tire back up, immediately I got a data point that says, hey, automatic tire inflation system, it's keeping the unit running. We're good to go. Just continue. Let's not bother the driver. But if the tire pressure is continuing to drop and automatic tire inflation system is running nonstop and it can't keep up, we got a significant bolt in that
Mhm.
tire. We should alert the driver so he can safely pull off to the side of the road, eliminate any kind of additional issues on the highway, and actually pre-alert the inbound location where this tractor and trailer is coming to have that technician on standby if timing is critical to be able to replace the tire. And that's just a very simple example. You could talk about brakes. And instead of bringing brakes in on a scheduled time or miles based period, popping all that wheel off and inspecting the brakes. And oftentimes we would just replace the brake pads, even if they're only 50% warm because we're already in there. Well, let's move away
Mhm.
from time and miles based to condition based and actually having this prediction is we think based upon this trailer's use, you got another 16 weeks before you need to pull this unit in just basically because I have a sensor on that. So
Yeah.
the use cases are endless when we talk about physics-based AI.
Yes, and I've been just so interested in where a lot of folks are going when it comes to that predictive maintenance. Because I've even talked to folk kind of like you just had mentioned, hey, we're just going to replace it because we think it's time to do so. Even just with automated documentation and having that stuff. And, I've talked to so many folks where they're repairing the same thing over and over again just because they don't have the data or information. Was this done before? When was this last completed? Let's just do it again. And it seems, I think a lot of folks are probably like, oh, well, at least we know it's good. It's safe to keep moving. But I mean, you do that enough times and
That's a lot
you're
of work.
spending a lot of money.
Yeah, especially when you have 275,000 pieces of equipment going around.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, you do that enough, and you're basically throwing money out the window,
yeah.
But then people look at it the opposite, and they say, "Well, I think this can go a little bit longer. I think this could stretch further." But if you don't actually have those sensors and that data, and no matter how experienced you are, what you think should not be that the way that you operate your operation when there's so much technology out there now to say, "No, I know
Yeah,
when this needs to get done."
and then the key ingredient with that is, again, because with the advent of AI, this is gonna make this really easy, but we gotta put it to use, and the concept of having a digital twin, I can now have a digital twin of each and every asset, not which asset class or asset type or exact model number, but each individual asset, and I can predict failure patterns before they occur, like a starter as an example. Oftentimes starters will fail, and some fleets might replace a starter every year because they don't want to have a delivery van broken down in the neighborhood. You know, but I can actually look at the the voltage crank signature pattern and be able to detect in advance. When do I think that starter might actually fail? And AI is making that very easy. So instead of replacing it every year, let's watch it and let's replace it when it's 2 months out or 1 month out from our predicted component failure. And this is going to be extremely important as we move more towards autonomous operations or fully automated operations. We may not always have a human around to help us understand the condition of that asset. So sensors and data and AI can lead the way for that.
Yeah, it's incredible how quickly too we're just moving down that path. It's been,
Absolutely.
it's so cool to watch. I think, yeah, I mean, obviously, I know more about this industry than others where that technology is really paving the way. But I think this is probably one of the cooler industries to actually sit and watch because it really is making such a difference for the folks that are, I mean, most literally helping our country move, with these assets, whether it be a construction company over the road, UPS, So it's a very cool time to be a part of all this, especially for someone like yourself that, is putting all this technology in place when you said earlier, hey, I was there when we were doing stuff on paper and now you have AI sensors sending you messages. So
Great
well,
Anus.
we're so for all fleet leaders that are listening here, and I'm sure we have some folks that obviously are not at the scale of a UPS per se, but they still are looking to take the data that they have and actually put some more of this execution into their operation. What advice do you have? Any mindset shifts? What can folks take away from this and actually start implementing in their operation?
Yeah, I think I'd first start off and let's stop thinking about technology as reporting tools. Let's not use technology to look in the rearview mirror. What's already occurred, what's behind us, and really shift that and to start thinking about engineering your operational systems and putting that data to use, creating actionable insights, and again, meeting it, putting it in the hands of the folks who can use it every day, meeting operations where they are. So let's drive some automated decisions into the workflows. And again, leadership, they must align the IT organization with the maintenance organization, with the operations organization, the safety organization. We are all one team working for the same company, working against our competition. So let's make sure we bring all the right players in. And for the IT guys, get business intimate.
Mm.
So really, at the end of the day, winning fleets, they'll put this fleet technology. It's not what the back office anymore. It's now a mission critical infrastructure that will actually propel us moving forward. And those fleets that don't adopt that, they may not be in business moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you can spend money on the greatest technology, but if your team's not aligned on how you're using it, that you're not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
You're better off having less technology and working together, I think, than buying the biggest, baddest thing out there and then not having your teams work together. So that's great advice. Like I said, everyone needs to be in lockstep there, and meeting your operation where they are, I think, is the quote of the podcast. I love that
Well,
phrase.
thank you.
Well, Lawrence, thank you, so much for joining us today. Like I said, you have such an impressive background. I think you speak very well to this topic, and it's a very important topic. It's one that I think no matter where you are in your operation, it's something that you need to be aware of, something that you need to keep your eyes on, because if the industry is all going there, you kind of need to. Everyone needs to keep up, right? So I hope a few folks can take some really good advice from this.
My pleasure. Glad to join you. Thank you
Of
so much.
of course, have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you guys next month on SafeTay Talks.